The NFL scouting combine is over, which means the draft is closer, but free agency is even closer. We have a big show coming up on the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Chubb runs, he's to the 10, 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubba Lubba Hub.
It's gonna be sick.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm Andy McNamara. Let's get to some Cleveland Browns talk here, people. Okay? I love the NFL because it never really sleeps. There's like 1 week in June where stuff doesn't happen, and the rest of the time it's all go. Scouting Combine in the books. And as you guys know, if you've been following me for any amount of time on Twitter or X at AndyMC81, Instagram at AndyMCSports, at SickPodBrown, you know I'm a Combine junkie. And I got my notes. I got my notes for this year, focusing primarily on what the Browns need. And that is wide receiver, fast wide receivers in that second round or below grade. I sprinkled in, there's a quarterback that caught my eye. I'll talk to you about that. Running back as well. So we'll go into that. Lots of franchise tag news coming up. Interesting running back free agency group as the Giants are not going to franchise tag Saquon Barkley. And I think this could be, not that Nick Chubb would not have re-signed or redone his contract with the Browns, because like we spoke about last week, I think that will get done. I think both sides will get that done. Andrew Berry said as much. But it's even better news if you're a Browns fan, because you have the likes of Saquon Barkley, you have Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, it's Josh Jacobs, big names that if you're Nick Chubb coming off an injury where you're not going to be able to start partway through the year, there's no market for you. So I think there'll be a fair deal. But that's just a bit of good news for the Browns. If there was any question in your mind about Nick Chubb and his marketability, I think we're going to be just fine there. But let's bring in a guy who was at the Combine in Indianapolis from the Orange and Brown Report, Noah Weiskopf, joining me here, making his debut on the Sick Podcast. Noah, welcome, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Well, hey, I wanted to get on somebody with some interest in the Browns with their boots on the ground at the Combine. And we can go over a few of the names that caught your eye, that caught mine, and kind of try to piece together this Browns offseason where we know the free agency will help set the tone to a degree of the draft. But just big picture, what were some of your takeaways from being at the Combine?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is, normally in Indy, it's very people talking and rumors getting out and that kind of stuff. And this year was oddly quiet. There were some things that, were murmured throughout the lobbies and everywhere that the teams are meeting with other people. And outside of that, the big rumors didn't really happen this year. And I think that that's for a variety of reasons. And some of those reasons that have been expressed to me were the betting in sports, and the NFL is really going to start cracking down on in terms of, letting information get out to the public, because at that point, betting starts to become an issue with that, right? Yeah. And another reason is with the salary cap, the biggest jump in NFL history, I think it was, teams were kind of caught off guard. And the thing with that being, or not even caught off guard, they expected it, but once you see it, it's a big deal. And, I think that agents and players want that extra money to sort of go right to them, and teams are kind of hesitant. Like, just because we have this extra money doesn't mean that your market all of a sudden is jumping way higher than it is.
Right.
So a lot of just waiting and settling down. And I think that this next week or so, I know today's been pretty hectic, but from here on out, I think teams are finally starting to settle down, talk with people, and come to some conclusions. So I think that that's probably why it was a little slower than usual, but still obviously a lot of people down there, a lot of teams talking with other teams, agents, all that kind of stuff.
Make sure you're clicking subscribe, notifications on, jump in the comments. Let us know, who do you want the Browns to draft? What position, what players, someone that jumped out to you over the Combine or in this process that you want the Cleveland Browns to get on? And you can get us on Twitter, X at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81. So, Noah, with that being said, and the Browns, as we know, needing an upgrade, some speed really at that wide receiver group. We have Amari Cooper. You mentioned that salary cap jump. Good news, because it put the Browns over the cap. Looks like that should avoid any any big names having to be cut because of the cap. But wide receivers, my question to you is, you were able to see them. I know on TV they looked remarkable. Were they almost too good? And could that hurt the Browns with too many going too high before they pick at 54?
I don't think so. And here's a reason that it's been stated a bunch of times. Well, I heard it at the combine, right? Like, this is the deepest wide receiver class anyone's pretty much ever seen. Like, this is unprecedented. Like, there are so many wide receivers that would be, for example, Marvin Harrison is going to be the first receiver off the board from Ohio State. Malik Neighbors in any other year is the first receiver off the board. And the same with Odunze from Washington. All three of those guys are wide receiver ones in draft classes. And then you have guys behind them in another tier of Keon Coleman's and Troy Franklin's. All those guys are super great talents that are going to start to fall a little bit just because of team needs in the first round. Not everyone's going to take a receiver, right? And I think that actually helps the Browns a lot. The Browns are at 54 and they have the ability to move up if they wanted to, stay pat, or even move backwards. But I think that receiving depth is really beneficial for them to be able to sit if they wanted at 54 and get a receiver in the second round that normally in an average class would be going significantly earlier. And I mentioned guys that are probably going to be around that area. And before Xavier Worthy ran his 40, he was probably in that area, right? And at his press conference, and he told us that that 4.22 John Ross record was in jeopardy. And it's pretty cool to see him go out there and do that. But
called a shot.
Yeah, exactly. And he was a guy that was going to be right there at 54 that the Browns had a formal interview with, that they had expressed interest in. And now you're looking at end of the first round, really early second round because of that 40 time. But I know Jermaine Burton told me down there that he had a formal with the Browns. I think that he could be a guy that's right around that 54 spot. And we'll see if Troy Franklin falls a little bit to that 54 area too, because I think those two guys who, all three of them that I mentioned, have had formals with the Browns that the Browns are interested in. All three of those guys could have the potential to be right around there. And if the Browns fall in love with one of them and they're starting to hit the 40 area in the second round, who knows? Maybe they make a move up to get one of those guys and get their guy, like we saw them do with Jeremiah JOK, who they moved up, saw that he was a first-round grade for them, decided to move up and take him, and that obviously has panned out so far for them.
Which is refreshing because usually the MO for Andrew Berry is to trade down, but you're right, that JOK reference is spot on. If they really like a guy, they can go up and get him. And there are a few of those. Yeah, Xavier Worthy probably bumped himself up to the first round with that blistering time. He also has punt return experience, which is just that extra little juicy bit that the Browns have been missing. You have like a Roman Wilson, perhaps. A couple names I want to throw at you that jumped out to me. You mentioned Troy Franklin. Yeah, I'm with you there. 6'1", 176. The speeds were just remarkable. Like 4.41 out of this class almost comes off as like slow, but obviously it's not, right? Like it was just so good. Another guy, and I'm not sure, I'm getting the feeling he might be going higher in the twos than will be at the Browns, but maybe. Adonai Mitchell here, Noah, really stood out to me. 6'2", 205, 4.35 40, the vertical 39.5-inch side speed, catchability, chance to be a WR2 as a rookie. Like this is, for what the Browns need, speed and size. Like on paper, this guy looks like the prototype. Is 54 too low? Is he going to be gone before then?
I think it'll be close. I think that, people stock as we get closer. Again, the draft is pretty far away still in comparison.
And free agency too.
Coming up, right? And if the Browns make a splash at wide receiver, if they bring in another guy, then that automatically makes it a little more complicated in terms of how many receivers you really want. They're going to have to carry on the 53-man. But I think that those tier of wide receivers, it's going to be really, we'll have to wait and see who's going to be available, because those guys, it's just going to be based on what teams like and based on interviews and, what teams really want in a receiver. But you mentioned Xavier Worthy's a guy that the Browns love versatility, and a guy to be able to run that, play that type of receiver role, but then also be a punt returner. They really value that. And that's something I always, I'm looking back now, Jakeem Grant was the guy that they really valued. He gave a 3-year deal, an all-pro returner, obviously going to have him returning kicks, punts and kickoffs. But then, they wanted to get him involved before all the injuries. They wanted to get him involved in the offense. So they like those guys to do both things, and they wanted to, give him some slot time, get him on end arounds, get him going down the field to try to make big plays. And I think that, Xavier Worthy provides that. But again, I don't know if he's going to be there. But yeah, that second tier, there's going to be some guys available around that time that in any other draft would probably be end of the first round talents. Right.
A couple other receiver names that jumped out, and I posted it on X at AndyMC81. Ricky Pearsall and Ladd McConkey. Now, Ladd McConkey's been getting some play right? And rightfully so. 5'11", 186, 440. You can play inside, outside. I loved in those drills. I watch in those drills, when they're catching the ball, are the hands natural, but are they also keeping their speed when they catch him? McConkey was just like, he wasn't losing a beat. But if he's gone, with the hype a little bit being from Georgia, that Ricky Pearsall also stood out to me. 6'1", 189, 4.4, 140. He was smooth in and out of his cuts, great hands and route runner. Does a McConkey or Pearsall whet your appetite? Would you be fine if the Browns came away with somebody like that?
Yeah, I think McConkey's really talented, and he's blowing teams away this offseason, this pre-draft process. But, a guy like Pearsall from Florida, it was Florida, right? A guy like him, I think he's older. He's on the older side, which is going to hurt his stock a little. I don't know if the Browns would be willing to – I think he's going to be 24 by the time the first game comes. So, that's always a question. I know Andrew Berry's asked about it. I think he was asked about it at the Combine when we were there. But, just taking those older guys, it's something that he obviously says that they're open to doing. They don't really look too far into that. But based on experience, based on his prior experience, I'm not positive that they would be sold on a guy that's going to be 24 by the time his first game as a pro starts. Right.
No, fair point. In conversation with Noah Weiskopf from the Orange and Brown Report. So Noah, as you said, look, there's wide receivers. Every team's not going to take a wide receiver. It's also a super deep offensive tackle class. And the quarterbacks. We know teams like to overdraft those guys. On the quarterback side, who did the most in your mind to really raise their stock? Because, of course, we know Caleb Williams didn't throw. You had several of the higher names from multiple positions not do drills or not do portions of the drills. Who kind of raised your eyebrow here?
Yeah, I think Michael Penix is a guy that I find really intriguing.
Yeah,
he's a really special player, and I think his hand size was top 10 ever at the Combine when he came to measure in. I mean, he's got what it takes, and we'll see with that whole first round wide receiver thing. I think that the biggest thing I had heard down there was there's a potential to be top 4 picks are all quarterbacks.
Wow.
So that would be a first in NFL history. Not obviously nothing's for sure, but JJ McCarthy, a lot of teams are really high on him. So I think that he could probably sneak into that 4 spot if Arizona decides to trade down. But I mean, Caleb Williams in my eyes is a lock at 1 to the
right.
Bears. And then you can't imagine the Commanders taking anything but a quarterback. So probably looking at a Drake May. And I envision the Patriots would take a Jaden Daniels and stay there. And the 4 spot,
I like Daniels.
If a team wants to, move up and get a quarterback, I think that J.J. McCarthy could be a guy that slips into number 4 overall. And then you could even see a Bo Nix, Penix sneak in. I mean, there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are taken with a lot of quarterback needy teams in this first round.
Sure. Yeah. Bo Nix, I thought, did himself some good at the Combine. And Penix, I think, Noah, if you are able, and we're not able to, but if you're able to take away and remove the injury part from Penix, like, boy, man, I can make an argument that guy should be maybe the second QB taken. Like, he is that impressive, but we can't ignore those injuries. And quite often we see in sport, if you're injured in college, that follows you. Quite often you just don't shake that. And that's the big concern. It's the major injuries to Penix. But boy, I think some team's gonna get him. And if he can stay healthy, we might be looking back in a couple years thinking, wow, how the heck did Penix go that late?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of talent in this draft overall.
Yeah.
But yet, obviously, wide receivers we talked about, but quarterbacks too. I mean, Caleb Williams obviously is the number 1. He's getting, Patrick Mahomes type hype in terms of comparisons, which I'm not positive he's going to obviously live up to that, but he's a special player. And, behind that, I really like Jaden Daniels too. I think that his versatility, what he's able to do, I think he'll be a really good player in the league. Drake May seems almost like the Josh Allen type of quarterback that we saw when he was in the draft. And
I was thinking like Justin Herbert comparison, Noah, like just a bit of that look, and not dissimilar to Josh Allen, but kind of that, like, the tools are there, maybe a little raw, maybe a little indecisive, but we know how Justin Herbert popped in to the league when he got his chance. And it's like, whoa, I think you're right. I think Drake May could be that type of range player.
Yeah, and then like I said, those 5 or 6 guys that can all be honestly they could all really excel in the league. Really intriguing to see what's going to happen there, and then mix those receivers in. And like you said, the tackle class is really, really solid. I know Joe Alt's a guy that's going to be that top 10 for sure. I think he just turned 21 like a couple days ago. So I mean, that's a really, really young dude that is, I think, stood at 6'8", 6'9", something like that at the time. I mean, he's a monster.
Unreal.
Someone to draft that, get their left tackle for years to come. I mean, there's a lot to like in this draft.
Well, you draft him, you left tackle 15 years.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
It's
like
ridiculous.
The Penny, right? Like Sewell is in Detroit. He's going to be there. I mean, he's there for, a long time.
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. So outside of those, did any other player jump out to you for possibilities for the Browns? I'm expecting the defensive tackle spot to be addressed at the highest level in free agency if they can get a Christian Wilkins or Chris Jones, please. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. Did anybody from that group or any other player pop out to you? He's like, hey, you know what? The Browns maybe could be interested in somebody like that at some point in the draft.
Yeah, I know we talked to a lot of edge rushers that some of those intrigued me. I know there's a Brennan Jackson from Washington State edge rusher that I really enjoyed talking to. He was a really good dude and just very, I don't even know how to explain it, but just talking to him, you got a good vibe from it. I really like what he has. I think that he's at a 265 or 275 weight, and I think he ran a 4.6 something in the 40. I mean, he's a really good player. And again, the draft class is just so deep, but overall, we'll see where the Browns go in free agency. I think it's going to be hard for them to land a Christian Wilkins, but, pry him away from a Houston. I feel like Houston makes just a ton of sense for a guy like that with a franchise quarterback like that and on a cheap deal. And then you get, they have edge guys, and they'll see if they retain Greenard. I mean, they have a really, really talented team, and a defensive-minded head coach can only, intrigue someone like a Christian Wilkins more to a team like that. But we'll see if they're able to make a splash. But I think that just overall, a lot of the defensive tackles and edge rushers were really impressive. I think that we could really easily see the Browns going that route at 54 too. I think that defensive tackle can't be ruled out. But like I said, that's why free agency comes first. You see what you'll be able to get there, and then you can draft based upon that. But I also know the Browns are going to want to draft just solely based on a need. They're going to want to go for the best player available. And I'm not ruling out any position outside of maybe a couple that they're going to take at 54. Like I can see them taking a tight end at 54. I can see them taking a lot of different positions. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, let's not count out second or third round cornerbacks. We know Andrew Berry loves his quarterback, and boy, Martin Emerson was a shocker when the draft was in Vegas. I was like, who the heck's that guy? A cornerback? What? And now look at Emerson. So I think cornerback could always be in play too.
Yeah, and I think that it's even more, intriguing to see what they do with Greg Newsome, because this is the offseason they need to pick up his fifth year. They're not going to be able to pay Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Emerson. They just can't do it. That's just not how this works. So they're going to have to move on from probably Newsome at some point. You have to imagine they're going to not want to keep and pay big money to a guy that they've been playing in the slot. Emerson has the, physical traits of what you want long-term. So they'll have Denzel and Emerson, I imagine, keeping them around on the outside. We'll see if they want to trade Newsome. I'm not sure, what the return would be on that. I guess a third. If they could get a third, they would be happy with that. I'm not sure how much that intrigues Browns fans, but, I think that that's probably the most realistic thing. But also they'll pick up the fifth year and we'll see what happens. Maybe they just want to ride it out with him and let him walk in free agency, get another year out of him and those three talented corners.
Well, and then see if like a Cam Mitchell, who they drafted last year, can make a raise up, because you keep sort of Newsome in that fifth year as the insurance. Ideally, Mitchell pops up. You're like, oh wow, you still have him on the cheap deal, and you kind of rotate with that. So, lots of possibilities, man. And we'll see. Yeah, you're right. Free agency coming, and that really will set the tone. Do the Browns go in free agency and get, let's say, a Gabe Davis from Buffalo, who has familiarity with a Dorsey, the new offensive coordinator? Is it a KJ Osborne out of Minnesota who popped a bit in a lesser known name as a 3, and that lessens the pressure to have to take someone? It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and I know there's guys like Marquise Brown's out there, Calvin Ridley's out there. So if they want another target like that, those guys are out there that are probably going to make a good chunk of money. So you're going to have to get in on that. But that's what you got to do if you want one of those bookend receivers. I mean, I always say, like, outside of the Chiefs is your outlier with Mahomes, all the teams that are at the top have those two guys really that are able to be leaned upon in any given time. And so having Amari Cooper is super nice, but you want that other guy. And I don't know who that they're, feel that that's worth it to them to give that chunk of money out of those 3-4 top of the class free agents. But, we'll see. I was really high on all those big names before they got tagged, T. Higgins and Mike Evans, because when you look at it, throwing all your money at someone like that, if you sign him to a 4-year deal, what the Browns have done, especially with Deshaun Watson, is pushing their contracts back, right? So backloading those, the cap hit doesn't hit until a couple of years down the line. So if you're able to do that, if you would have been able to say pry a T. Higgins away in his prime on a 4-year monster contract, you push that cap hit back. And by the time his cap hit starts to hit the cap, you have, Amari Cooper's about time to come off the books anyway.
Right.
So you could kind of just switch that. But, those guys are obviously really valued throughout the league and not going to really hit the open market. So, those are the next tier of guys that'll be at the top is the Gabe Davis, the Marquise Brown, the Calvin Ridleys.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd in there too. And you really have to – wide receiver is always the danger position, where you risk overpaying, right? That's the real – because you have to look, like for a Tyler Boyd, if, for example – he would go from the 3 for what he's probably going to get paid goes up to a 2. Now, he has shown potential to be a 2 in the past, but you're kind of, for what you pay a guy, you could be taking him up a level where he can't necessarily perform.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's why the danger zone is kind of there, and they have to really see, and that's why the Browns don't usually get into bidding wars, especially for wide receivers. You have a price, you have an offer. If they want to take it, they take it. If someone goes beyond your offer, then they walk. So that's where the Browns are really smart, and I feel like in the past, they've really done that well, especially last year. The top of the market guys, the Hargrave that went to the 40, they had a huge offer out for him. The Niners gave him more money, and that's where he went. So it's like stuff like that where they're not going to overpay, but they're going to be in the market for those guys.
Right. We got Tomlinson. Last one for you here. Cedric Tillman, I feel, is being overlooked here, Noah, on the Browns. This is a guy who had injuries last year at Tennessee, but jump ball specialist, has the size, not the speed of some of these, 4-3 guys. But we saw willing blocker in limited time. For me, I'm keeping my eye on Cedric Tillman, and I wouldn't be surprised, Noah, if this time next year we're talking about, wow, Cedric Tillman had a hell of a year. Because if you give that guy a chance, and if he can show that he could earn number 2, number 3 reps, I still think this guy has untapped potential and playmaking ability that isn't being noticed.
Yeah, 100%. He's really impressive. And I mean, best friends with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I think that, he has that capability of taking that next step. We'll just see if the Browns are able to get that out of him. But I think that it's kind of similar to a David Bell. We saw a lot of him the second half of the season. He made some big plays down the stretch. And so, you have a crowded wide receiver room, but you want to upgrade at all times, right? So you want to try to get one of those guys, but you have the David Bells, you have the Cedric Tillmans. So it's like, if you bring in one of those free agents, I don't know how much time those guys are going to get to prove themselves,
right?
Which would be an issue. But
on the cheaper deals.
Right. And I think that, Cedric Tillman has a ton of potential, but we'll have to see if he's able to carve out a role for himself, whether, or not the Browns do. If they sign a big guy in free agency or draft someone even, then it gets a lot more crowded. Yeah.
Interesting. Noah, tell people where they can find you, hear all your great work, and thank you so much for giving us your insight from inside the combine.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me on Instagram and X at Browns with Noah, and then all my work is on theobr.com, all my written work.
Amazing work, brother. Thank you so much. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes. Noah Weiskopf from OBR. And did some great work there covering the Cleveland Browns, was at the scouting combine. A couple names, and I'm telling you, folks, I just, the more I think about it, the more I think Cedric Tillman is going to be a playmaker this year for this team. I really do. And that's why if the Browns don't sign a wide receiver in free agency, I am fine with that. Actually, the more I think about it, I think I'd prefer that the Browns don't sign a wide receiver of note in free agency. That assuming you can get one of the guys we were mentioning out of the combine at that 54 or move up. If you give me a playmaking guy, I don't need to waste time or resources and never know about a Cedric Tillman. Andrew Berry favors his draft picks. If this is your draft pick with Tillman, lesser extent David Bell, possession guy. I think we know what David Bell is. Nice player, but Cedric Tillman, I think the sky's the limit, potentially. So let's give the guy a chance. Give him a shot. Rookie deal. You give him a chance and you get that cheap deal, that 3rd round price tag for more years. Like, this makes so much sense to me. If he can flash and show, I would much rather give Cedric Tillman a shot early to bump up to that 2nd level with a rookie coming in to compete and kind of having Amari Cooper, draft pick, Cedric Tillman as your 3-pack, Elijah Moore in the slot, David Bell you mix in, and Joker, of course, as well. That's what I prefer. I don't think people are considering Cedric Tillman enough. This guy's so big, talented, and the willing blocking, just like DPJ was. Willing blocker. A couple more names I want to throw by that I was checking out from the combine, my combine notes here. Running back, and I tweeted out about him on X at SickPodBrowns at AndyMC81. Running back for the Browns. Okay, so right now we have Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong. I love Kareem Hunt as much as you do. Doesn't look like he's coming back. Okay, if you could have me Kareem Hunt until Nick Chubb came back, I'd sign up for it, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then Nick Chubb, when he comes back, does he come back in October? Is it early October, mid, late? Is it November? What does he look like when he comes back? What I'm saying is you're going to need some reinforcements. You're going to need some reinforcements to that committee, and I think I got the guy for us. The guy is Ray Davis out of the University of Kentucky, day 3 projection, perfect committee back. And the guy was the type of player I was targeting here, was somebody that could be that bowling ball, that punch, the Kareem Hunt role. Really, when you need 1 or 2 yards, that guy's going to get you. He might not get you 6 yards, but he can get you the 1 or 2. Powerful. And that's really what we're seeing with Kareem Hunt going is, I'm just going to plug in my computer here, guys, before the power goes out. 1 sec. Let me just get that for you. Just so that we don't go off the air. There we are. Boom. But for Ray Davis, it's showing a guy who is powerful, big charging legs, downhill runner, and the footwork I saw. Some of the reviews and watching a little bit of his game tape was a little indecisive when hitting the hole. But I think when you give him too many options. If you're like, dude, go get me 2 yards, and that guy goes straight forward downhill, he's getting you 2 yards. He's getting you what you need. 5'8" and 3/8 in height, 211, thick lower body, but not like sluggish thick, like power. Power runner, 4.53 40, that's fine. 21 total touchdowns rushing and catching combined last year. He's got decent hands, right? If he can pick up the pass protection, I think we're okay. Excellent footwork, quick feet in those drills where they have the little bags. Go. I was watching that, I'm like, that guy didn't slip. He was money. And that's one of the drill types that I think can equate to the NFL. Whereas, if you're doing broad jump, all right, that shows power, but I don't, you're not standing still and jumping 9 feet in a game. You are using quick feet. Decisive hitting the hole in those drills. Because what they did too was they put the cone one way or the bag one way, and then you had to make your decision. This guy didn't flinch. Just vision. That's what popped out to me with him as well. And natural pass catch. I thought he looked nice and smooth. Right? And he was producing there. So as a day 3 guy, if you can get him probably 5th round. Right now, the Browns have 2 5th-round picks. If you can get me a Ray Davis in the 5th round as that extra bit until Nick Chubb comes back to complement the power. Jerome Ford's not power. Pierre Strong, more shifty, not power. I need a power guy. I think Ray Davis can be that punching through and carry you through. And then maybe you find something and he turns into something. It's going to be more of a committee focus. We know that. And one other name, quarterback for the Browns. We know we're not drafting one of the top guys. Don't have a 1st-round pick with the investment in Watson, etc. You still need a veteran backup. Is it going to be Flacco? Who knows? But there's also the mindset that if you're Andrew Berry and other general managers have the mindset of drafting a quarterback each year, you get the currency. Can you find the next Brock Purdy? And that's 7th round, right? For the Browns, if they wanted to take somebody as a developmental guy, you can probably get him on the practice squad. I know they still like DTR. One of the guys that really stood out to me in this, Caden Slovis, Slovis, 6'2", big hands, ran the fastest 40 time of any of the quarterbacks that ran. Caleb Williams and others didn't run, but ran a 4.55 second 40. Interesting thing, wasn't a mobile quarterback in college at all. Played for 3 different schools. Wasn't a running quarterback, but shows he's got some athleticism, he's got some speed, has the height, look bigger than the 6'2" to me. Nice wide frame. So the knocks on, played in 3 schools, missed about half the season last year due to injury, but isn't injury prone. And I think it's a case where maybe just couldn't find a rhythm. But what I saw out of him with the big hands, good grip, crisp, short throws, good footwork in the pocket. That's another thing you look for out of these combine. How's his drops? Look clean. Was pushing off on that front foot. Shifted the weight to the front foot well. Nice placement on the outside line ball as well. Had it on the back shoulder. And powerful deep ball. So Caden Slovis as a guy, and he's being projected like 7th round, maybe undrafted. Like, what else are you going to get with that 7th round pick? Go get yourself Caden Slovis. See what he's got. Big dude. Has some athleticism. You could work him in. I like him. I think that would be a nice play. Caden Slovis, I'm big on as a developmental guy. Someone you want, see what you have. And again, if it's a 7th round pick or undrafted, doesn't work out. Oh well. But you got to take those shots on the extra quarterbacks, right? Work for the 49ers. It'll work 1 out of 100 times, but maybe you can be that one and get somebody who at the very least maybe could develop into a strong backup quarterback, because right now you can't rely on the durability of DTR. You just can't. You just can't, right? Let me know who you like coming out of the combine. What players do you want the Browns to draft? Okay, I gave you some of mine. Hit me up. Give us a follow on Twitter, X, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81. I got a bunch listed there. On Instagram and TikTok, at AndyMCSports. Let me know there. What about free agency? You got your eye on somebody. We need to make a splash to that defensive tackle position. That opens things really up in the draft, I think, for us, if you can get one of those big guys. If you can't, you're not going to be able to get one of them in the 2nd round. And we've seen even 1st round picks, top 15 defensive tackles take a couple of years, 2-3 years to really make an impact. It's a little bit like the tight end spot where it takes you a little bit of time to adjust and really be impactful. So that's not a money spot to me. Wide receiver you can get and make an impact, but that means they're going to have to go and be very aggressive in the free agent market. So we'll see how they do there. Going to be away on vacation next week, but we'll come back the week after and address all the free agency moves, hopefully some big news for the Browns, and get even more ready for the NFL draft. So thank you to Noah Weiskopf, to Anello, to Sammy. Thank you to the Sick Podcast crew. Free agency is coming up again. Let me know. Who do you want the Browns to draft? Let me know. You've been watching the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, and as always, go Browns.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.